So what can we do in this dataset menu now? Let me first maybe decrease the size a bit more so that you can read a bit more of the options. I think this is still fine regarding the font size here. However, in this dataset menu here, in this dataset option, we have some core differences when we compare it to Power BI Desktop. First thing is, this is obviously not the query editor, so we cannot work on the data in a data preparation, data cleaning, data shaping way. This is not possible. Additionally, we also see that we don't have any options that we saw in the data or the relationship view. So we cannot establish relationships between different tables here. We cannot create new columns using DAX or create new measures. This is all not possible. This dataset here, though, allows us to access our, dataset in terms of the fields here in the right part of our screen, as we know it from the report view. So this can be confusing at this stage. We have a dataset option here, but we're actually in the view that we call the report view in Power BI Desktop. Nevertheless, we also have this reports option right here. We'll explore that in a few minutes, but let's first keep this in mind. We have dataset access, but the only thing we can do with this dataset is we can create visuals with that data. We cannot work on the data itself. Before we create such a visual though, let's quickly explore some of the options we have right here. For example, up here in this bar, you have file and view options. The view options are options you know from Power BI Desktop mainly. File options will become important when we save this report. You can see it right here, as I said. So the dataset view is actually kind of the report view here. Here we have the reading view and the edit view. At the moment, the edit view is enabled. This means we can now, create new visuals here. And if you click onto reading view, so to access this read-only option, then you have a slight problem here at the moment because you cannot revert this change. This is a bug. At the moment, I'm recording this in Power BI Pro here. You can avoid this bug though if you just reload the page. Then you are back in your actual data set here. If you click down here, so you see we are now in this part of our project. The idea behind the reading view would be that you get dataset access only in terms of you can just see what you have here, but you cannot change it. We'll explore that a bit later throughout this module too. Then you have the option to change the layout to a mobile layout right here. We also know this from Power BI Desktop, so let's go back to the web layout. You can ask questions, an interesting feature, but also covered a bit later. Explore here is grayed out as we don't have data. Here you can add text boxes, shapes, or buttons. So this is exactly the same option that we have in the report view of Power BI Desktop. The visual interactions, as you can see right here, are just the edit interactions menu, which we also know from Power BI Desktop. So we can, for example, also create a slicer here and define which impact the slicer should have onto other visuals. We have this refresh option here. This is something we didn't see in Power BI Desktop. Refresh will also be a dedicated part of this module. As you can see, I'm referring a lot to later parts of this module, but I just want to make sure that you see these options and that you know that we will cover these later. Refresh will simply be important when it comes to updating our data, because we now connected Power BI Pro to our local project. But if the underlying data in Power BI Desktop in the source files changes, then we kind of need to update the information here in Power BI Pro, and the refresh feature, which has some other nice convenience features, is the feature we need to use for this purpose. Then we have the option to duplicate this page, and here we have another option to save this report as we saw it in the left part. Here, these three dots allow us to analyze it in Excel, not what we need at this stage though. The rest is as we know it. We have our area here where we can create the visuals. We have our filters column, the visualizations column, and the fields. So that was enough of theory about the dataset here. Let's now create a new visual and maybe a new one. Let's maybe take this pie chart here and, you know all the features. You can drag it around. So let's make it a bit bigger like this. And in this pie chart, we can now visualize data. Let's say we want to have our male population for the values here, and our legend maybe should be our, let's say, the age categories like this. All right, so this is our first visual, and then let me create another visual. I want to have two in here, maybe the stacked bar chart, this one, and here we take the female population maybe for the values, and we take the female population for the different regions as the legend here. So with that, we created that new report page right here. And we have a report already here. And so far, we are still in this dataset part. Therefore, in the next lecture, we'll see how this dataset menu and the reports are connected.